Yes, I'm Benjamin. I'm one of the co-founders of Three Beards. So let's be really clear about what the Three Beards is, because this sets up the punchline. So Three Beards was basically set up as a networking event. And what basically happened was I arrived in London about 5 years ago, and I bumped into two likely-looking characters with beards by the name of Bryce and Michael. We went to a tweet-up. Tweet-ups used to be this kind of horrible self-organised disaster. And we went along to this kind of tweet-up, and I basically made friends with them by sitting there saying, this is fucking shit. This is the worst thing I've ever been at. And so we decided we would create a better version of the events. That was kind of the purpose of the Beards. The Beards was never really set up to make any money, and luckily has never fulfilled that as a plan. So that's good. We achieved our aims. Our aim is really just to make sure that people get together and talk openly and frankly about business and get to know each other and kind of realise we're all the same. And actually, most of us don't know what we're doing. That idea of we don't know what we're doing is really core to the Beards. It's kind of almost our mission statement, which is we really haven't got a clue what we're up to. And we're not actually that kind of bothered, because we kind of feel that if we go through the process and we learn about it and we look at it intelligently and sort of rationally and we have arguments about it, we'll probably come up with a better way, because we kind of feel that most people are pretty lazy and they kind of tend to do what's been put in front of them. And so the kind of the big reason the Beards as a brand is quite sort of combative, it's quite forceful, it's quite strong, is because we kind of believe that we're different and we're kind of weirder than other people and we're slightly better and stranger and we're kind of mental. And so as I kind of have been going through this Chew the Fat series, I've been reading a lot of business books, because a lot of people we interview have written business books. And most people who've written business books, they're bullshit merchants. That's what I've kind of learned. And I've read their books, and most of them are a little bit bullshit. And with a great sense of dread, this book appeared in my hand. And I was like, cool, Brewdog's awesome, but Brewdog, maybe this guy isn't an author, maybe this guy's not a writer, maybe this guy hasn't really got anything to say. And that's quite common. There are two types of business books in the world. There is one type of business book which explains the title of the book 12 times in 12 chapters. Right? Everyone's seen that book, right? Lean Startup is a great example of explaining the same concept 12 times in 12 different ways. It's a fantastic book, but it's not the most kind of in-depth, intelligent, detailed book. And there are other books which really go into detail, and they're maybe not very well produced, they're not very well finished, but they're very, very fascinating. Maybe they're super detailed, they're like an MBA in a book. But very few books hit the middle ground. I have to say that this book hits the middle ground, and the reason I was attracted to it is I opened it and I looked through it, and no offense to you, James, you can understand my predicament. I was like, okay, let's see what this is. And I opened it at page 226, and fate had fallen upon me, for this is the first line that I read. Networking is indeed for fools, high on the illusion of their own self-importance, feeding their fragile egos with lukewarm canapes, cheap champagnes, and slaps on the back from their fellow fools. And I thought to myself, that's exactly what we're trying to not be. That's exactly what we don't want to be as an organisation. This is exactly the sorts of people we hate. We don't want this backslapping, well done, you've done well, have a business card, no. We want meaning, we want value, we want honesty, we want truth, we want people to turn to each other and say, I don't get it. Don't get your business, don't get your idea, don't get it, because that's how we learn. And as soon as I opened this book and read that, I thought, I might like this book. I have a feeling this brand, this organisation, this book really thinks similarly to me. And those of you who do know me will know I don't really recommend business books, but I have to say, this is a fantastic book. You're all genuinely in for an absolute treat. It really leaves very little for me to do to introduce the co-founder of Brewdog, the beers that you're drinking, the inventors of crowdfunding within the UK, and possibly the very people who brought craft beer to this shore and created an entire new market. Please put your hands together for James Watt. Tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? What did you go to school? What's your background? We always like these kind of questions. To starters.
I grew up in the northeast of Scotland. I studied law and economics at Edinburgh University. I got a job in a legal office. I walked out after 2 weeks. I absolutely hated it. I thought there's no way I'm going to spend my life sitting here doing what is basically glorified admin. I saw people in the same legal office at the end of their careers and didn't want to end up like that. So I spent the next 6 years on a North Atlantic fishing boat. So I started in the deck, I went to nautical college part-time, I did my captain's qualification, and then during that time I started making beers at home. So kind of about 2004, the UK beer scene dominated by the faceless, generic, multinational, monolithic industrial corporations making goddamn awful fizzy, yellow, insipid liquid cardboard and spending millions upon trying to convince people that that watered down fallacy is what good beer is about. And at the other end of the spectrum, you had some kind of sleepy, stuffy, conservative cask ales that would put your grandparents to sleep. And we were looking out and seeing that amazing craft beers coming out of the US, and those were the type of beers that we were making at home. So that's how our beer journey began.
I mean, you talk about it quite a lot in the book, about this kind of the path and how that affected you. And I wonder if we can talk a little bit about this kind of, being on an oil rig, being this kind of this
fishing boat.
So,
it's not the same.
Look, I'm a land dweller. Anything with waves is scary and frightening. I don't want anything to do with that. But I mean, what did you learn in terms of kind of going through that process? Because I imagine that's got to be. I mean, that sounds like it would shit me up.
It's one of the toughest places to make a living. So North Atlantic in January and February, you're working some 24, 36-hour stints on deck. It's tough, it's dangerous. And I think a lot of the ideas in the book about team, about leadership, about company culture were forged during my time in the North Atlantic.
These 24, 36 hours, that's quite a long time. And we, in tech, we like to bullshit ourselves that we work hard, right? But most of the time it's sat on Reddit pretending we're thinking about code. So, explain to me a little bit like what those 24 to 36 hours would be like and the sort of problems you'd be confronted that you'd have to kind of deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be out on deck, it would be freezing, you'd have freezing rain in your face, you'd be doing your best to catch fish to get a wage, you'd be concerned about the safety of everyone on the boat. We'd fish in weather conditions up to kind of force 8 or force 9, so pretty tough conditions to be fishing in. So, I'm sorry. Oh. Does that always happen? It's fine.
Not yet.
Yeah. If anyone else hasn't started well, hasn't. Yeah. So kind of really tough conditions, and we take a lot of risks in our business, but it kind of puts it into perspective because we're not risking anyone's health at any time. So the kind of time this year really gives you a different perspective on business overall, I think.
For you, commitment is an essential. I mean, this kind of again comes through the book. There's kind of a commitment, a kind of belief, and a kind of almost a mission is really essential. Whether that be get back to port safely or reinvent craft beer. And how did you sort of, for some people here that, they're either beginning their first businesses or maybe their second, or they're thinking about sort of changing businesses, how can they sort of ascribe that mission? How can they work that out? Because for some people, they're building an app because they kind of want to, or they're trying to build a business because they want to feel free in their own existence. How can one find their own mission, and how do you kind of get a team aligned around that?
Well, I think you've just got to find something that you're massively passionate about, and starting any small business, it's so tough. You're going to get stinging criticism, you're going to get constant rejection, you're going to get kicks, you're going to get knocks, you're going to get setbacks. And if your reasons for starting a business is purely financial, I think you've got to be a very greedy son of a bitch for that financial motivation to sustain you when things get really, really tough. And that's where you've got to go back to your mission. And that's what gets us out of bed every morning. It's just, we set out wanting to redefine the beer scene in the UK. We wanted to put the taste, the flavour, the artisan craftsmanship back into people's beer glasses. We want to open people's eyes to these spectrum dimensions of flavour, stylistic diversity that they never knew existed, and we wanted to elevate the status of beer in the UK. And the UK beer scene has changed so much in the last kind of 5 or 6 years, but go back 8 years ago when we started, it definitely wasn't anything like it was today. We definitely had a huge enemy in the shape of the kind of mega beer global corporations to kind of fight against.
And so do you say then that, I mean, you say in the book that it's good to have this kind of this fight and this kind of this urge, but there are probably people within here who maybe are thinking to themselves, I don't really have that fire, or there are lots of people in the world who just like to be liked, and you're kind of like kind of sort of saying this kind of like fuck everyone, they can go fuck themselves, and you're talking to a kindred spirit here, but I have other board members that have to agree with me, and employees, and compromises are kind of seems to be a natural part of business. How does one kind of keep sort of fighting when we actually still need to partner and engage with stakeholders and kind of manage our relationships? We can't constantly keep saying "fuck you" to people.
I think is that you've got to decide what you stand for. You've got to decide what you want to do well. You've got to decide why you want to do that. Then you've got to do it to the best of your team, yourself and your team's ability. And I think there's just so many businesses and people that don't stand for anything for fear of offending people or alienating potential people. But our opinion has always been, unless we get some people to absolutely hate what we do and what we're about, we're never going to get people to be insanely passionate about what we do. And that space in between is just pretty boring anyway, so we don't want to be in that space.
Talking of offending people, perhaps you'd like to talk about some of the marketing campaigns that you had, one of which in modern days, I think, would be considered particularly un-PC, and I won't ruin the punchline, and I hope you know what I'm talking about. You posed in a very similar manner to President Putin. Would you like to maybe tell the story of that sort of marketing campaign? Because that's quite a dangerously aggressive approach.
Yeah, I can never, ever go to Russia. I'll just get to that bit, like land in Moscow and be taken away when you show your passport. So I can't go there, which is a shame. So yeah, as a company, we love to make a stand for what we believe in, and we love to do things that maybe other companies don't have the guts to do. So to coincide with the Winter Olympics, we decided to make a beer that parodied President Putin and Russia's archaic, insane stance towards homosexuals in Russia. So we made a beer called Hello, My Name is Vladimir. We gave the proceeds from the beer to charities which represent repressed minorities worldwide. But then to launch that beer, there was a photo shoot of myself half naked on a horse in the iconic Putin pose. And A, I hate horses, and B, it was February. I had been working out a lot, you can maybe tell, but yeah. I hate horses. It was very, very cold, and it's something that got a huge amount of publicity, but it didn't cost us anything to do. I persuaded someone I knew to let us borrow the horse. We got someone to take photos because they liked the project. We made the beer, but that was on TV in the UK. That was on TV internationally. That got huge global pickup, and it entrenched what we believe about it.
You're putting your punch here. What did you market it as?
It was a beer that was not for gays.
I think that's pretty ballsy. There's a lot of people who could have very easily not taken that as satire. And
that would have been their problem and not ours, and we wouldn't have cared. We wanted to make a stand. We wanted to do something that we believed in. We wanted to do something that raised awareness of the issue. We wanted to do something that donated money to charities that represent oppressed minorities. If people like that, awesome. If people don't like it, that's up to them.
You quote Kurt Cobain in here, which is, I'd rather be dead than be cool. This kind of idea of you don't want to be cool. You want to do what is sort of authentic and truthful.
We just do what we do, and I've always said to myself and my team, what we're doing is either going to be a reasonably big success, or it's going to crash and burn completely, but we don't care because, again, the space in between is boring. So we've taken huge risks and gambles from day one, and that's something we're not about to stop doing. It's what we believe in. And 8 years ago, I was as happy as could be working in the deck of a fishing boat, and if I end up doing that again in another 5 years, I'll be happy as well.
You talk about that gap.
Yeah.
And one of the sort of fantastic pieces of advice in here, which is, I think, counterintuitive to most of what we're taught, is to not look for a gap in a market and to define your own sector, your own niche. Talk to us a little bit about that, because that's not how we're sort of educated to believe or sort of identify opportunities. Yeah,
a lot of the book is that these kind of textbook things that they teach you in business school just no longer stack up. So things like target market, if you're looking for a target market, all you end up doing is taking, because like young people want to be old people want to be young, people want to be this and that. So you're going to base your marketing on the stereotypical aspirations of a stereotype. You're just going to alienate, offend people and wind up in a knot. So we've always been about doing something that we believe in passionately. We're so selfish, so we don't do any market research. We don't ask anyone what they think. We make beers that we would love to drink ourselves, and then if other people want to drink them as well, then that's awesome. And when it comes to this kind of gap in the market approach, if you're looking for gaps in the market, all you're going to be doing is kind of nibbling the edges off of someone else's second-rate pie. So for us, it's not been about looking for a gap in the market. It's been looking for an opportunity to create a whole new market where we can define how the game is played in that market. So UK beer market back in 2006 when we launched, dominated by the huge companies, high cost of entry, low margins, just low quality. So we didn't want to do any of that. So we wanted to redefine the UK beer market and introduce craft beer to the UK, lower cost of entry, higher margins, focus on quality. So by doing that, as opposed to looking for a gap in the existing beer market, we was able to change how the game was kind of played in the UK and create this whole phenomenon that's kind of really came to life over the last 5 years.
So, so far we've kind of, you've had a zero business experience to a certain extent, a legal background. You've worked in a fishing shop. You've been a sort of independent brewer, and then you've taken this very, very sort of strong punk sort of renegade ethos, both aggressive and dangerous and deliberate.
Yeah.
And then you decide, instead of raising from a few people who agree with you, you would open it to many. But you're yet a very divisive, very aggressive, very alternative brand, and yet you come up with this kind of model of alt finance. Talk to me about how that happened.
We set up in 2007. Before then, we were making beers at home because we couldn't find any beer that we liked. And in late 2006, we got the opportunity to meet Michael Jackson, not Michael Jackson, the pop star.
Good, right, good. That was helpful.
Was 24 at the time, too old for that, Michael Jackson. But Michael Jackson.
Allegedly.
Yeah, Michael Jackson, the famous beer and whiskey expert, and he tasted a beer that we'd made at home, put down the glass and told us to quit our jobs and start making beer. So we thought, fuck it, if Michael Jackson's saying that to us, let's do it. So we'd £30,000 worth of life savings. We got a £20,000 bank loan. We leased a dystopian, derelict shed from the council in a dead-end industrial estate in the northeast of Scotland. And we cobbled together some second-hand equipment. It was beg, borrow, barter, bootleg, cobbling everything together. We installed the system ourselves and we set out to make beer. So the first 2 years of this business, we were going absolutely nowhere. We'd both moved back in with our parents because we'd no money. It was 2 humans, 1 dog, 20-hour days, filling bottles by hand, sleeping in sacks of malt on the floor, and everyone locally in the northeast of Scotland was telling us, make beers cheaper, make beers with less hops, change your bottles, change your labels. But we were determined that if we were going to fail, we were going to fail in our own terms and doing something that we were insanely passionate about. So the first couple of years for us was tough. Then when we did start to expand the business a little bit and needed some cash, 2009, global recession, banks just impossible to get money out of, so we had to come up with an alternate way to raise finance. But as a company, we always love doing things differently. And before I get on to Equity Punks, back in the day when it was 2 humans, 1 dog, filling bottles by hand, we were selling at farmers markets, we were selling just out the boot of my car, and we sent some beer to a Tesco beer competition. And I kind of forgot about it and got back to just selling at farmers markets. And we got a phone call from Tesco 4 weeks later saying we'd finished 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th in this Tesco beer competition. So I went down to the Tesco head office and sat there, and the Tesco buyer was like, your beer's amazing. We want to put 4 beers in 400 stores nationwide. We can sell 2,000 cases a week. And I just sat there with my best poker face and didn't mention anything at all about the fact it was 2 guys, 1 dog, filling bottles by hand. So we'd 4 months to figure out how to supply this. So we went to our bank. This was early 2009, Bank of Scotland, and said to them, we put on suits. We never wear suits, but we'll put on suits. We said to them, we've got this amazing deal with Tesco, but I need £100,000 for a new bottling line. I need £50,000 for new fermentation tanks, but look how much beer we're going to sell at Tesco. This is going to be awesome. Please give us some money. And they just laughed at me. They was like, look, you've been going less than a couple of years. You're not paying your existing bank loan back. There's no way we can do this. So we went to the bank across the street, which was HSBC, and we took a bit of a punt, but we said to the guys at HSBC, our bank have just offered us an amazing finance deal on a bottling line and fermentation tanks. But if you can match that deal, we're going to shift our bank into you guys. We're a young, up-and-coming, edgy company. You want to work with us. This is going to be awesome. And they gave us the money. So business plan year 1 and 2 was make American beers and tell lies to banks. Maybe it's quite good as far as business plans goes, who knows, but yeah. So that's how we financed the business up into a point, but then mid-2009, that stopped working when we had lines of credit going with 4 banks, and we needed a way to get money, and this was kind of before crowdfunding was even a thing.
How much were you in the hole kind of at this point? Because 4 lines of credit with 4 banks sounds sort of north of 100,000.
Yeah, about 350,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you sort of roughly making?
That year we was turning over about 200,000.
Okay. And profit was?
0.
Okay.
So at the end of that year, we had a meeting with our accountant, and our accountant kind of quite dowered and Scottish. He looked at our accounts and says, "Well, boys, you're technically insolvent." And I was like, "Let's not get too hung up in a technicality." So we kind of kept on going, and we came up with what we called Equity for Punks. So as a business, we're so focused on community, on engagement, on shortening the distance as much as possible between ourselves and the people who enjoy the beers that we make. And for us, Equity for Punks is the ultimate incarnation of that philosophy. So we now have a community of over 40,000 Equity Punk investors. We've used it to raise £20 million so far. It's helped us finance our business, but our Equity Punk community is really the heart and soul of what we do. And any small company that's growing quickly has to have access to capital, but conventionally, where that capital comes from involves some type of compromise. So if it's a VC, you're selling your soul to a pinstripe vulture with all these terms and conditions. If it's a parent company, well, for us, that would have been one of the big evil international beer companies who we've had some offers from, and you can imagine what our response has been. But either of those two things would have involved us having to make some type of compromise. But with Equity for Punks, our business is owned by people that are as passionate about fantastic beer as we are, so we don't have to compromise anything at all about what we do.
I know we have some Equity for Punks.
I've got some Equity Punks.
Shareholders. So hands up those who've invested. Quite a few have actually.
Twice, 2 hands. Awesome.
Wow. So you, well done. There's some incredible chapters, titles. One, which I just think is indicative of the entire book. Cash is motherfucking king. You know, that's a good thing to read, especially in the tech world.
I think there's a subtlety there, though. For us, cash is king, but profit definitely isn't king. Profit is the fuel for us as opposed to the destination. So we've been solidly profitable for the last 6 years, and every single penny we've invested in the 2 things that we're most passionate about, our beer and our people. So this is about building something awesome, but to do that, you need your cash flow to be stable.
So you would always advocate returning profit straight back in, invest directly back in?
It's what we want to do. We care insanely passionately about 2 things, and we think if we do those 2 things amazingly well, then whatever happens to us is going to be fine. So we were the first company with a national hospitality footprint to be a living wage employer, and just that company culture, we want to massively overinvest in our people and be the best company we can to work for, and we want to make the best beers on the planet, and that's all we want to do.
I'm going to open it up for questions because most of you just basically need to read this book.
A company like Halft inside, would you still be happy with what you've done, or would you then try and like change your business plan to?
We don't measure success by the size of our company, and I think anyone who measures success by the size of their company, it leads to you making compromises to become a certain size. So if we measured our success by being a certain size, at some point we're going to have to either dumb down our product, discount our product, do all these things that we absolutely hate doing. So that's not a metric. We measure how engaged, how happy our team are. We measure how well our beers are doing in terms of our own internal ratings and analysis of the beer. And if both of those things are doing well, then whatever size we are is the size we're meant to be, and we'll be happy with it.
Which breweries do you really rate at the moment? And in return, I'll give you one of your own so you can wash the foul taste out of your mouth.
SAB Miller, Heineken, AB InBev.
Diageo, I'd imagine as well?
Just on Diageo, there's an awesome story that'll take 2 minutes to tell. So we were up for a business award in Glasgow, and it was the Scottish Independent Bar Company of the Year. And the organizer actually told us the day before that, hey, you better come along because we've got some good news for you. And we were there at the event, and the winner got announced, and it wasn't us. So the day after, we spoke to the organizer and we asked him, like, what happened? You told us we were going to win. And he was far, far too honest, but he told us just before we were going to give it to you, the guy, the sponsor was there from Diageo, came up and said, if you give it to those guys, we're going to pull all future sponsorship. You've got to give it to someone else. So I was like, that's the best news I've ever heard. Thank you for this amazing gift. And we posted a blog about it, and it went absolutely insane. So our hashtag, and the winner is nut, was the 4th most tweeted hashtag globally. We'd like people from Mexico email and say they're boycotting Diageo. Diageo then issued a public apology, which made it even better. It was like on the news. It was everything. So it was just this phenomenal thing. So it was a great opportunity for us to make a stand, but it just showed it was a telling microcosm for how scared a huge global player was about this tiny young Scottish upstart as well. So we quite enjoyed that fact. So back to the question, Ballast Point out of San Diego are doing some phenomenal things. McKellar's a great friend of mine. I love what he does. Lost Abbey, again, San Diego, Three Floyds, just south of Chicago, Dogfish Head. Those are the beers that I've got at home at the moment.
If your ambition is to just make the product as best as it can, then does that mean that you consider, like, where do you go with the product itself as in terms of where are the areas of improvement? If it's not in the business itself, it's more in the product. What are your ambitions of growth or improvement?
Yeah, well, at the moment, we've got huge projects with working even closer with our hop suppliers. So Martin, who I set the business up with, and 4 of our key production people have just spent the last couple of weeks out in the Yakima Valley in the Pacific Northwest of America. So ever closer relationships with the key hop growers. We now deal direct with the hop farmers, which means we can select not only our hops, but the time the hops are picked, how the hops get to us, and hops are so important to the beers that we make. A huge project as part of our packaging to really minimise the oxygen in the bottle. So oxygen in the bottle or can is an enemy to beer that's going to make it taste older quicker. So a huge focus on that. A huge focus on personal development of people within our teams as well.
I really have been wondering for the last 15 minutes, what happened to the dog?
Oh. Yeah, the first dog from the website sadly passed away when he was just 4 with cancer. But there's now a new dog. He's called Simcoe. Simcoe is my favourite hop. So yeah, Simcoe lives in my house, and he's a complete nutter, but he's awesome. So there's a new dog that's replaced the old dog.
You mentioned at the very start that meeting Mr. Jackson, who proved to say guys, you're on the right track.
Yeah.
So quick question: how come this sort of connection introduction came about?
Oh, we actually met Michael Jackson. We were down, he was doing a beer tasting at the White Horse in Parsons Green in London, and we were just huge Michael Jackson fans. So we went down and we took this bottle of beer with us that we'd made at home. And we thought, what the hell, let's let Michael Jackson taste it. And we've still got a photo up in Martin's office, which is Martin, Michael Jackson, and a bottle of beer we made at home. But doing this, we've been fortunate to meet a few pretty exciting people as well. So this story will take a couple of seconds, but bear with me. So we've also done quite well in a few business competitions because we've grown quite quickly. But we won the 2010 Scottish Business of the Year. But I was quite surprised we won that competition. It was late at night. I was filling out the entry form. I'd been up since 6 o'clock that morning trying to fix our son of a bitch bottle machine. And I just wanted to go to bed. But I thought if we do well in the competition, it's going to be good publicity. It's going to help us. And I got to question 10. And I found myself in a mini late-night ethical dilemma. Question 10 was, in less than 200 words, please describe your company's position on social, ethical, corporate responsibility. Now, at that time, as a 3-year-old company, our responsibility was trying to make sure we could pay our staff at the end of the month. So we weren't adopting baby pandas, we weren't saving the rainforest, we weren't helping old ladies do their shopping. We had given some money to the Lifeboat charity, but I was like, do I fudge this? Do I make something up? Should I be honest? And in the end, the fact that I wanted to go to bed won out, and I ended up typing something quite ill-advised in the box, pushing send, going to bed. So what I typed in the box was, I'm not fucking Mother Teresa. So maybe a little bit too honest, but and we ended up winning the competition. So I was like, afterwards, I met the judge and I was like, dude, what were you thinking? Did you not see the answer to question 10? And he was like, yeah, but you're a young, edgy company, it ties in, and everyone else just made something up about helping pandas do their shopping or something. So anyway, as a consequence of winning the Scottish award, we got shortlisted for the European award, so European Business of the Year 2010. So I was in the States at the time, so Martin, who I set the business up with, had to fly to Italy to present to the judging panel. It was amazing. Heads of state, the President of Romania, members of the European Parliament, leaders of European business. And I thought it would be fun if I didn't tell him anything about this form that I'd filled in a few months before. So Martin gets there and he's going through his presentation, and as he's doing that, the judges are nonchalantly flicking their way through this form. The President of Romania, there's a photo of him up in our office as well. The President of Romania, God bless him, is the first guy to get to question 10. But to make matters worse, his English wasn't that good. So as opposed to reading the sentence to mean I'm not saintly good, he read it to mean I'm not having intimate relations with a dead international peace icon. He stood up to Martin and his exact words were, stop, young man, why you no fuck Mother Teresa? And that's one of the last business competitions we ever entered, because how can you top that?
Do you have any tips for startups looking to start now or a few years down the line for getting on with not your employees, but the other guy in the room, the other founders?
Yeah, I set the business up with Martin. We'd known each other for so long before we set the business up, and people are always amazed to hear this, but we haven't had a single argument since we set up the business. We're both so passionate about what we're trying to do. We are both at every stage of this journey completely aligned in what our goals are, what we're trying to achieve, so there's no disconnect there. But also, most importantly, we completely know what we're both good at and where our responsibility lies within the business. So ultimately, Martin has got the final say with everything when it comes to the beer, and I respect that, even if we have discussions around it. And everything that's not beer, I have the final say, and Martin respects that, and we can have discussions, but that's how it works. And we set those parameters up crystal clear from day one, and we haven't deviated from that, and it's worked perfectly for us. But I think without that, then it becomes very, very difficult.
That's it. That's all we've got time for. Before we applaud correctly, James, I
can answer all of these in a sentence and people will be happy. Okay, so we've got the coffee from Has-Been and Deersdene. Well, Has-Been for the coffee we used in the kettle, and Deersdene and Glasgow for the coffee post-fermentation. I love both, but ale and especially IPA.
There's someone you should meet in the room who makes really good coffee, I can tell you that fact.
Cool.
Next.
We've been profitable every year since 2009. So last year we generated about 6 million of EBITDA, and we'll increase that this year. And we maintain authenticity by having a huge focus on what's inside the bottle.
Awesome. Cool.